Let us begin with a simple and familiar act. Let us walk into a forest. The air grows cool and still. The light filtering through the high canopy becomes soft and dappled. We find ourselves in a cathedral of living pillars, a quiet and sacred space. We look up at the great silent trees, standing in what appears to be a state of profound and solitary dignity. We see a collection of individuals, each one a separate entity, a silent competitor in a slow, patient and vertical race for the sun. We see the strong and the weak, the young and the old, each one rooted to its own small patch of earth, living out its long life in isolation. This is the forest as we have always seen it. It is a beautiful, but ultimately lonely place. But this perception, as ancient and as intuitive as it is a profound illusion. It is a story that we tell ourselves, a story that is born from the limitations of our own senses and the fast-paced timescale of our own animal lives. Beneath the quiet, visible world of the forest floor, hidden from our eyes in the dark, rich earth, lies a secret. It is a secret of immense complexity and breathtaking beauty. It is the secret of a vast, ancient and living network that connects these seemingly solitary trees into a single, unified and communicating whole. The forest is not a collection of individuals, it is a superorganism. It is a community, a family, a single, distributed intelligence that is constantly sharing, talking and working together. Tonight, we will journey beneath this illusion. We will learn to see the forest not as a place of silent competition, but as a place of constant, quiet conversation. We will travel down into the soil to witness the ancient and essential partnership between the roots of the trees and the delicate thread-like filaments of fungi. We will discover the wood wide web, a biological internet that allows the trees of the forest to share resources, to warn each other of danger, and to nurture their young. We will learn to decode the silent chemical language of the trees, a language that is spoken not with sound, but with a rich and complex vocabulary of fragrant molecules sent out upon the wind. This is a journey that will reveal the forest as a place of profound social complexity. We will meet the great mother trees, the ancient hubs of the community that act as the keepers of the forest's wisdom. We will witness an economy of sharing, a silent underground marketplace where the trees trade with their fungal partners and support their neighbours. We will uncover a world of cooperation, of altruism, and of family, but also a world of warfare, of deception, and of crime. The story of the forest is as rich, as dramatic, and as complex as any human society. To understand this secret life of trees is to see the world with new eyes. It is to be humbled by the discovery of a form of intelligence that is utterly alien to our own, a slow, decentralized, and collective consciousness that is woven into the very fabric of the ecosystem. It is to learn that the deepest strength lies not in individuality, but in connection, and that the health of the one is inseparable from the health of the whole. So let us quiet our minds, slow our breath, and step into the real forest, the forest that lies hidden just beneath our feet, and listen to the silent, ancient, and beautiful conversation of the trees. Our story begins not in the lush green forests of today, but in a world that is almost unimaginably ancient and stark. Let us travel back in time, 450 million years, to the Silurian period. The oceans are teeming with life, but the land is a desolate and hostile frontier. The continents are vast, empty expanses of bare rock, gravel, and primitive mineral-based clay. There is no soil as we know it, for soil is the creation of life, and life has not yet truly taken hold here. The sun beats down from a harsh and unfiltered sky. The land is a world of crushing gravity, of extreme temperatures, and of deadly ultraviolet radiation. It is a world without the gentle, moderating influence of plants. In the shallow, freshwater pools and at the damp edges of these barren continents, a revolutionary experiment is taking place. The descendants of the green algae, having already conquered the water, are making the first tentative forays onto the land. These first pioneers are small, simple organisms, likely resembling modern-day liverworts or mosses. They are taking a courageous and perilous leap, leaving the gentle, supportive cradle of the water for the harsh realities of the terrestrial world, and they are facing a profound and seemingly insurmountable challenge. The land is a world of scarcity. The air is rich in sunlight and carbon dioxide, the raw materials for photosynthesis. But the soil, the raw mineral substrate, is a nutritional desert. The essential nutrients that a plant needs to build its body, the phosphorus, the nitrogen, the potassium, are present in the rock, but they are locked away in insoluble crystalline forms. The primitive hair-like rhizoids of these first land plants are simply not capable of extracting these nutrients from the rock. They can anchor the plant, but they cannot feed it. The first land plants are starving. They have access to energy from the sun, but they lack the fundamental building blocks of life. At the same time, another great kingdom of life, the fungi, is also making its first journey onto the land. The fungi are masters of decomposition and absorption. They are heterotrophs, meaning they cannot produce their own food. They make their living by secreting powerful enzymes into their environment, enzymes that can break down complex organic matter and even weather the surface of rocks, releasing the mineral nutrients locked within. Their bodies are made up of a vast sprawling network of incredibly fine thread-like filaments called hyphae. This network, the mycelium, is a biological mining operation of incredible efficiency. The fungi are brilliant at extracting phosphorus and nitrogen from the environment, but like the plants, they are facing their own existential crisis. On the barren, lifeless land, there is very little organic matter to decompose. The fungi, too, are starving. Here we have two different kingdoms of life, two different kinds of beings, both struggling to survive on the same hostile frontier. The plant has an abundance of energy, the sugars it creates from sunlight, but it cannot get the mineral nutrients it needs from the rock. The fungus is a master of mining those minerals from the rock, but it has no source of energy. The solution to this shared crisis, the solution that would not only ensure the survival of both, but would go on to change the face of the planet forever, was a partnership. It was a symbiotic alliance, a grand and ancient bargain struck between the plant and the fungus. This is the birth of the mycorrhiza. Let us imagine in the quiet microscopic world of the primitive soil, the first fateful encounter. A fine, questing fungal hypha is growing through the mineral substrate. Nearby, a simple pioneering plant is clinging to the rock. The plant's roots, or rhizoids, are leaking a small amount of the sugars they have produced from photosynthesis into the surrounding environment. For the starving fungus, this leakage of sugar is a powerful and irresistible chemical signal. It is the scent of food. The fungus begins to grow towards the source of the sugar, towards the plant's root. When the fungal hypha makes contact with the root, a complex and delicate negotiation begins. This is a conversation conducted in the universal language of chemistry. The plant and the fungus exchange a series of chemical signals, a molecular handshake that allows them to recognize each other as potential partners and not as a threat. The plant recognizes the fungus as a beneficial symbiont, and it lowers its defenses, allowing the fungus to approach and to interact with its cells. The fungus in turn recognizes the plant as a source of life-giving carbon. The fungus then begins to form an intimate physical connection with the plant's root. In the case of the arbuscular mycorrhiza, the most ancient and common type of this association, the fungal hyphae gently penetrate the outer cell wall of the root cells. Once inside the cell, the fungus does not attack or consume the cell. Instead, it branches out into a beautiful, intricate tree-like structure, the arbuscule. This arbuscule is a marvel of biological engineering. It is a vast, convoluted surface, a living membrane that dramatically increases the area of contact between the plant cell and the fungal cell. It is the marketplace, the trading post, the site of the great symbiotic exchange. Here, the bargain is fulfilled. The plant, rich in the sugars it has made from the sun, pumps a steady stream of these energy-rich carbon compounds across the membrane and into the fungus. It is a huge investment for the plant. A modern tree can send as much as 30%, and in some cases even more, of its total photosynthetic production, down to its roots to feed its fungal partners. In return, the fungus delivers the precious goods it has mined from the soil. Its vast, sprawling network of hyphae, which extends far beyond the reach of the plant's own roots, has been diligently scavenging the environment for phosphorus, nitrogen, and other essential minerals. These nutrients are transported through the fungal network back to the root, and are delivered directly into the plant cell at the site of the arbuscule. This partnership was a game changer. It was the key that unlocked the potential of the terrestrial world. For the plant, the fungus was a vast external root system, a highly efficient and extensive mining operation that gave it access to the nutrients it needed to grow and to thrive. For the fungus, the plant was a stable, reliable, and direct source of the energy it needed to live. It was a perfect and profoundly successful alliance. The plants, now properly nourished, could grow larger, stronger, and more complex. They could evolve true roots, stems, and leaves. They could build the first forests. The fungi, now properly fed, could expand their networks, creating a vast, living, and intelligent web that would connect the entire emerging ecosystem. This ancient partnership, formed in the quiet, desperate world of the early land, is not a historical curiosity. It is a living, breathing, and absolutely fundamental reality that underpins the health and the existence of almost every terrestrial ecosystem on Earth today. Over 90% of all plant species, from the smallest wildflower to the tallest redwood tree, are still engaged in this same ancient mycorrhizal relationship. The success of the plant kingdom is, and always has been, inextricably bound to the success of its silent, hidden, and indispensable fungal partners. To contemplate this ancient partnership is to be humbled by the profound and beautiful truth of interconnectedness. It is to understand that the great green edifice of the terrestrial world was not built on a foundation of competition, but on a foundation of cooperation. It was built on a handshake, a bargain, a quiet and mutually beneficial agreement between two entirely different forms of life that recognized, in the face of a shared struggle, that they were stronger together than they were apart. The story of the forest does not begin with a tree. It begins with a partnership. It begins with a quiet, fateful, and world-changing encounter between a plant and a fungus in the ancient, silent soil of a long-dead world. The ancient partnership between plant and fungus is not a given. It is not a passive state of being. It is an active and dynamic process, a relationship that must be newly forged with each generation, a delicate and intricate dance of recognition and connection that takes place in the dark, silent, and microscopic world of the soil. To truly understand the foundation of the forest's secret life, we must witness this moment of creation. We must follow the journey of a single fungal spore and a single, questing root tip as they find each other in the vastness of the earth and perform the quiet chemical ritual of the Underground Handshake. Our story begins with a seed, a maple seed perhaps. A tiny winged samara has spun its way to the forest floor. It has lain dormant through the cold of winter, and now, in the warmth and moisture of the spring, it awakens. The tiny embryonic root, the radicle, emerges and begins its downward journey into the soil. This young root is alone. It is not yet connected to the great underground network of the forest. It is a solitary explorer, and it is in a race against time. The small store of food within its seed will not last forever. It must find water, it must find nutrients, and it must find a partner. At the same time, scattered throughout the soil around it, are millions of tiny, dormant fungal spores. Each spore is a microscopic vessel of potential, the offspring of the vast, ancient mycorrhizal fungi that already inhabit the forest. Like the seed, the spore is waiting. It is waiting for a signal, a chemical whisper that will tell it that a potential partner is near. As the young maple root grows, it begins to release a complex cocktail of chemical compounds into the soil. These are the root exudates. They are a rich mixture of sugars, amino acids, and other organic molecules. For the plant, this is a deliberate and targeted act of communication. It is sending out a chemical invitation, a fragrant molecular beacon that announces its presence. The plant is, in essence, saying, "I am here. I am a maple. I am ready to trade." A nearby fungal spore detects this chemical signal. The specific blend of compounds in the root exudate is a unique signature, a password that the fungus can recognize. The signal is received, and the spore awakens. It germinates, sending out a single, fine, thread-like filament, a hypha. This hypha is a questing, exploratory probe. It is not growing randomly. It is growing with purpose. It is growing towards the source of the chemical signal, towards the root. It is following the scent trail, a process known as chemotaxis. The root, in turn, is also listening. It can sense the chemical signals that are being released by the fungus. The dialogue has begun. It is a quiet, call-and-response conversation, a molecular negotiation that takes place in the thin film of water that surrounds the soil particles. The plant and the fungus are confirming each other's identity, ensuring that they are compatible partners. The plant must be sure that it is not inviting in a pathogen, a parasitic fungus that will attack and consume it. The fungus must be sure that the plant is a species that is capable of providing the sugars it needs. Once this mutual recognition is established, the plant prepares for the arrival of its partner. It alters the structure of its root at the point of contact, preparing a place of entry. The fungal hypha then makes its gentle approach. This is a moment of profound trust. The plant must lower its normal, powerful defences, the same defences it would use to fight off a disease, to allow its symbiotic partner to enter. The fungal hypha makes contact with the surface of a root cell. And then, in the case of the arbuscular mycorrhiza, the most common form of this partnership, a remarkable and beautiful event occurs. The fungus does not puncture or break the cell membrane of the plant. Instead, the plant's own cell membrane begins to invaginate, to fold inwards, creating a small pocket, a welcoming embrace for the fungal hypha. The fungus grows into this pocket, and the plant membrane grows around it, encasing it completely. The fungus is now inside the plant cell, but it is still, technically, outside the plant's living cytoplasm, separated by this thin, continuous layer of membrane. This intricate interfacial membrane is the site of the partnership, the physical location of the marketplace. Once inside the cell, the fungal hypha begins to branch, again and again, forming a beautiful, intricate and highly complex structure that looks like a tiny, perfectly formed tree. This is the arbuscule, from the Latin word for little tree. The formation of the arbuscule is a marvel of coordinated developmental biology. The plant and the fungus are working together, exchanging a constant stream of chemical signals to guide the construction of this perfect shared organ. The arbuscule is a structure of immense surface area, a vast convoluted landscape of membrane that is perfectly designed to facilitate the efficient exchange of molecules between the two partners. The handshake is now complete. The connection has been made. The young maple tree is no longer alone. It is now plugged into the ancient forest-wide web. Through this single, microscopic connection, it gains access to a vast and powerful new resource. The fungal network, the mycelium, becomes an extension of the tree's own root system. This network is a far more efficient and extensive mining operation than the tree's roots could ever be on their own. The fungal hyphae are incredibly thin, often only a few micrometers in diameter, allowing them to penetrate the tiniest pores in the soil, pores that are completely inaccessible to the much thicker root hairs of the plant. A single teaspoon of healthy forest soil can contain several miles of these fungal hyphae. This vast network explores a huge volume of soil, scavenging for the scarce and essential nutrients that the plant needs. The fungus is particularly adept at acquiring phosphorus, a nutrient that is vital for plant growth but is often locked up in the soil in insoluble forms. The fungus can secrete powerful acids and enzymes that can liberate this phosphorus, making it available for absorption. It then transports the phosphorus, along with nitrogen, water and other trace minerals, through its vast internal network, back to the root of the maple tree, and delivers it directly into the plant's cells at the site of the arbuscule. In return, the maple tree fulfills its side of the bargain. It sends a steady stream of the sugars it has produced from photosynthesis, down through its phloem to its roots, and across the arbuscular membrane to its fungal partner. This is a significant and continuous investment. The fungus is a hungry partner, but it is an investment that pays for itself many times over. The young tree, now properly nourished by its fungal symbiont, will grow faster, be more resilient to drought, and be more resistant to disease than a tree that has failed to make this vital connection. This process, this underground handshake, is happening millions of times every moment in the soil beneath our feet. It is the quiet, constant and creative act that weaves the individual plants of the forest into a single, interconnected and functional whole. It is a process that is built on a foundation of communication, of trust, and of mutual benefit. It is the first essential step in the secret social life of the forest. To contemplate this intricate and beautiful dance of connection is to understand that the forest is not built by individuals but by partnerships. It is to see the profound and simple truth that life, in its deepest wisdom, has chosen the path of cooperation. The connection has been made, The underground handshake is complete. The plant and the fungus are now partners, their lives and their fates intimately intertwined. What unfolds next is not a simple, one-way transfer of resources, but a complex, dynamic, and surprisingly sophisticated economic relationship. The forest floor, hidden from our view, is the site of a vast, bustling, and ancient marketplace. It is an economy that is based not on currency, but on the direct exchange of essential goods. It is a biological bartering system of incredible scale and complexity, a silent underground Wall Street where the traders are the trees and the fungi, and the commodities are the fundamental building blocks of life. Let us first consider the two main players in this economy. On one side, we have the trees. The trees are the primary producers, the manufacturers. They have a unique and almost magical ability. They can create wealth out of thin air. Through the process of photosynthesis, they take the simple, inorganic carbon from the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and using the energy of the sun, they convert it into complex, energy-rich, organic carbon in the form of sugars. Carbon is their currency. They have a direct and virtually limitless line of credit from the sun. They are, in the language of this economy, carbon-rich. On the other side, we have the mycorrhizal fungi. The fungi are the miners, the prospectors, the resource, extraction experts. They cannot produce their own carbon. They are carbon poor. But they are masters of the subterranean world. Their vast, sprawling networks of mycelium are geological exploration systems of unparalleled efficiency. They can permeate the soil, breaking down complex organic matter and weathering the surfaces of mineral particles to unlock the essential nutrients that the plants need to build their bodies. They are particularly adept at acquiring phosphorus and nitrogen, two of the most critical and often limiting nutrients in a terrestrial ecosystem. The fungi are nutrient-rich. The stage is set for a classic economic transaction. Each party has a surplus of something that the other party desperately needs. The tree has a surplus of carbon, and the fungus has a surplus of nutrients. The arbuscule, the intimate tree-like structure that the fungus forms inside the plant's root cells, is the marketplace where this trade takes place. It is here that the great symbiotic bartering occurs. The tree, in a continuous and generous flow, pumps the sugars it has produced down to its roots and delivers them across the membrane to its fungal partner. This is not a small incidental payment. A tree may allocate a significant portion, sometimes up to a third, of its entire photosynthetic budget to feeding its fungal network. It is a massive and vital investment. In return, the fungus delivers a steady stream of the water, the phosphorus, the nitrogen, and the other trace minerals it has scavenged from the soil. This is not a simple, fixed-rate exchange. It is a dynamic and highly regulated market. Both the plant and the fungus are savvy traders, and they are constantly assessing the market and adjusting their trading strategy to get the best possible deal. Scientists have conducted elegant experiments that have revealed the sophisticated economic decision-making that is taking place in this underground market. In one experiment, researchers grew a plant and allowed its roots to connect with two different species of mycorrhizal fungi, one of which was known to be a better provider of phosphorus than the other. The researchers found that the plant was not a passive partner. It was an active investor. It could tell which of the two fungi was providing a better return on investment, and it selectively sent more of its carbon, more of its sugar, to the more cooperative, more generous fungal partner. It was, in essence, rewarding the better trader and punishing the less efficient one. The fungi, in turn, are also making their own sophisticated economic calculations. In another experiment, researchers created a system where a fungus was connected to two different plants. One of the plants was kept in the light, where it could photosynthesize and produce plenty of sugar. The other plant was kept in the shade, where it could produce very little. The researchers observed that the fungus was not a foolish investor. It could tell which of the two plants was a better provider of carbon, and it selectively transported more of its precious, hard-won nutrients to the plant that was paying it more. The fungus, like the plant, is playing the market. This creates a dynamic feedback loop. A plant that is a good provider of carbon will attract and reward the most efficient fungal partners. These efficient fungal partners will, in turn, provide the plant with more nutrients, which will allow the plant to grow larger, to produce more leaves, and to photosynthesize more, making it an even better provider of carbon. It is a virtuous cycle, a biological success story that benefits both the individual plant and its fungal network. This underground economy is what allows the forest to function with such incredible efficiency. The fungal network acts as a vast nutrient-sharing grid. It can collect nutrients from a wide area and can redistribute them to where they are most needed. A tree whose roots happen to be growing in a nutrient-poor patch of soil does not necessarily suffer because it is not limited to its own local resources. It is plugged into the wider, forest-wide economy. It can import the nutrients it needs from other parts of the forest via the shared fungal network, paying for them with the carbon it produces from the sunlight that falls on its own leaves. This creates a level of resilience and stability in the ecosystem that would be impossible if each tree were acting alone. The network buffers the individual trees from the patchiness and the unpredictability of the soil environment. It is a form of biological insurance, a shared communal safety net. But the most profound and beautiful aspect of this forest economy is that it is not a purely capitalist system, based solely on direct quid pro quo exchange. It is also, in part, a socialist system, an economy that is capable of altruism and of supporting the weakest members of the community. As we have seen, the great mother trees, the central hubs of the network, will often send excess carbon and nutrients to the small young seedlings that are struggling in the deep shade of the forest floor. This is not a direct bartered exchange. The tiny seedling has very little carbon to offer in return. It is a gift. It is an investment in the future of the community. The mother tree, by nurturing the next generation, is ensuring the long-term health and survival of the forest and of its own genetic lineage. To contemplate the economy of the forest is to see the world in a new light. It is to recognize that the principles of trade, of investment, of supply and demand, and of market dynamics are not human inventions. They are fundamental principles of life itself. The forest floor is a place of constant, silent, and sophisticated negotiation. It is a marketplace where the currency is life's essential elements, and where the goal is not the accumulation of wealth, but the perpetuation of the entire interconnected system. It is an economy that has found a beautiful and sustainable balance between individual self-interest and the collective good, a lesson in economic wisdom that our own human societies would do well to learn. In any complex network, whether it is a human social network, the internet, or a transportation grid, not all nodes are created equal. Some are small and peripheral with only a few connections. Others are large, central, and highly connected, acting as the vital hubs through which a disproportionate amount of information and resources flow. The underground network of the forest is no different. While every tree is a node in this vast biological web, some trees, by virtue of their age, their size, and their position, become the indispensable centers of the community. These are the great ancient matriarchs of the forest, the vital communication and resource hubs that scientists have come to call the mother trees. To contemplate a mother tree is to look upon a living monument of time, wisdom, and connection. Let us find such a tree. It is a giant ancient Douglas fir, perhaps, or a majestic old-growth beech. Its trunk is thick and gnarled, its bark a rugged, deeply fissured map of the centuries. Its vast, sprawling canopy reaches high into the sky, a huge photosynthetic engine that has been capturing the sun's energy for hundreds of years. It is a magnificent individual, a testament to strength and endurance, but its true significance, its true power, lies not in its visible, solitary grandeur, but in the vast, invisible empire it commands beneath the ground. The root system of a mother tree is immense, a sprawling subterranean architecture that can extend for a huge distance in all directions. And this root system is not alone. It is intimately and extensively connected to the mycorrhizal network. Because of its age and its size, the mother tree is a massive and reliable source of carbon, a sugar-rich oasis in the underground world. This makes it an incredibly attractive partner for the fungal network. The most ancient and extensive fungal mycelia in the forest will have formed a deep, robust, and long-standing partnership with this tree. The mother tree is not just a node in the network, it is a supernode. It is the central server, the main hub, the grand central station of the forest's wood wide web. From this central hub, the lines of connection radiate outwards. The fungal network that is partnered with the mother tree is also partnered with the other trees in the surrounding area. It is connected to the other, mature trees, its peers. It is connected to the smaller, younger trees that are struggling in its shade. and it is connected most poignantly to its own offspring, the seedlings that have sprouted from its own seeds. The mother tree is the heart of a vast underground family, a clan that can encompass an entire grove. It is physically and intimately connected to hundreds of other trees, both kin and stranger, creating a complex and deeply social community. The role of the mother tree in this community is multifaceted and absolutely vital. It is first and foremost a great provider. Its huge canopy allows it to capture a vast amount of solar energy, producing a surplus of carbon far beyond its own immediate needs. And it is incredibly generous with this surplus. It pumps a steady and significant stream of its life-giving sugars into the fungal network, a river of carbon that flows out from its roots and becomes available to the wider community. It is the primary benefactor of the forest's underground economy, the central bank that finances the entire system. It is also the great communicator. Because it is so highly connected, the mother tree acts as the primary information hub for the forest. When it senses change in the environment, the beginning of a drought, a change in the soil chemistry, or the arrival of a new pest or disease, it can send out a chemical signal that can be broadcast via the fungal network to a huge number of other trees. It is the forest's early warning system, the sentinel that stands watch over the community and alerts them to impending danger. Its long life has given it a deep cellular memory of past challenges, and it can use this experience to orchestrate a more effective and coordinated response than any young, inexperienced tree could manage on its own. The mother tree is also the great nurturer. As we will explore in more detail, it plays a crucial and active role in the survival and the success of the next generation. It preferentially sends resources to its own kin, the seedlings that have sprouted from its seeds. It recognizes them through their chemical signatures as family, and it provides them with a steady underground umbilical cord of carbon, water, and nutrients, a form of parental care that dramatically increases their chances of survival in the dark and competitive world of the forest floor. It is, in a very real sense, weaning its young. The presence of a mother tree fundamentally changes the nature of the forest. A forest with a healthy, intact population of these ancient hubs is not a collection of competing individuals. It is a cooperative. It is a community that is more resilient, more productive, and more stable than a forest that lacks them. The mother trees are the keystones of the ecosystem. They are the agents of stability and the keepers of the forest's collective wisdom. The discovery of the role of the mother tree is a profound and humbling one, and it has forced us to completely reconsider our relationship with the forest and our practices of forestry. For centuries, the standard practice in logging has been a form of high grading, in which the largest, oldest, and most valuable trees, the mother trees, are the first to be cut down and removed. We thought we were simply harvesting the mature individuals, the ones that had reached the end of their productive lives. We did not understand that we were not just removing trees, we were decapitating a community. We were silencing the great communicators, we were destroying the central hubs of the network, and we were orphaning the next generation. We were turning a complex, interconnected, and resilient superorganism back into a collection of isolated, vulnerable, and struggling individuals. A forest that has lost its mother trees is a forest that has lost its memory, its social structure, and its resilience. The intricate underground web of communication and resource sharing is shattered, and the cooperative community devolves into a state of pure, desperate competition. The young seedlings, now cut off from the support of their parents, struggle and die in the understory. The forest's ability to withstand drought, to fight off disease, and to recover from disturbance is dramatically diminished. To contemplate the mother tree is to be filled with a sense of awe and of deep respect. It is to see that age, in the world of the forest, is not a sign of decline, but a source of wisdom, of power, and of immense life-giving generosity. The mother tree is a living library, a patient teacher, and a nurturing heart. It is the quiet, steadfast centre of a world that is far more complex, more intelligent, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. It is a powerful and poignant reminder that the health of any community, whether it is a forest or a human society, depends on the presence, the wisdom, and the generosity of its elders. The mother tree is not just a tree, it is the soul of the forest. In the classical Darwinian view of the natural world, the forest floor is a place of brutal and relentless competition. It is a battlefield where thousands of tiny seedlings, each one a desperate individual, engage in a life-or-death struggle for a few precious shafts of light that penetrate the deep shade of the canopy. The vast majority of these seedlings are doomed to fail. They will germinate. They will expend the small, finite store of energy in their seed, and then, starved of light, they will wither and die. Only the luckiest and the strongest, the ones that happen to find themselves in a rare sun-flecked clearing, will survive. It is a story of pure individualistic struggle. But the discovery of the Wood Wide Web and the central role of the mother trees has revealed that this is only a part of the story. The forest floor is not just a battlefield, it is also a nursery. And in this nursery, a quiet, hidden, and profoundly moving drama of parental care and community support is constantly unfolding. Let us follow the journey of a single tiny seedling, a young beech tree perhaps, that has just sprouted on the forest floor. It is living in a world of deep, green twilight. The dense canopy of the mature trees above it intercepts over 95% of the available sunlight. The little light that does reach the seedling is often not enough for it to produce the food it needs to survive. According to the old story, this seedling is alone and its fate is almost certainly sealed. But this seedling is not alone. It was born in a living, connected forest. Its roots are already beginning to form the crucial mycorrhizal connections, plugging it into the same vast underground network that sustains its parents and its neighbours. And through this network it begins to receive a lifeline. High above in the sun-drenched canopy, its mother, a great ancient beech tree, is producing a vast surplus of sugar. She's a photosynthetic powerhouse, her leaves creating far more energy than she needs for her own immediate survival. And she does not hoard this wealth. She sends a significant portion of it down through her trunk to her roots and out into the fungal network. And the fungal network, this shared biological internet, acts as a conduit, a delivery system. A portion of this life-giving carbon, this liquid sunlight, flows through the fungal hyphae and is delivered directly into the roots of the small, struggling seedling below. This is not a passive leakage. It is an active, targeted, and life-sustaining transfer. The mother tree is feeding her child. She's providing it with the essential energy it needs to survive the long, dark years in the understory. It is a form of external gestation, a long and patient weaning process. The seedling, subsidized by this parental support, can survive in a level of shade that would otherwise be fatal. It can bide its time, growing slowly, building its root system, and waiting for the day when a gap will finally open in the canopy, and it will have its own chance to reach for the sun. The evidence for this remarkable process is not just theoretical. Scientists have conducted elegant and beautiful experiments to trace this flow of resources. In one such experiment, researchers placed a large plastic bag over the canopy of a mother tree and filled it with a special, traceable form of carbon dioxide, a heavy isotope of carbon. The mother tree then photosynthesized, incorporating this heavy carbon into its sugars. Using sensitive radiation detectors, the scientists were then able to watch, in real time, as this heavy carbon traveled. They saw it move down the trunk of the mother tree, out into its roots, across the fungal network, and then, remarkably, they saw it appear in the tissues of the small seedlings growing around the mother tree. They had for the first time directly witnessed the act of a tree feeding its young, and the support is not just limited to carbon. The mother tree also sends water, nitrogen, phosphorus, and even defensive chemical signals to its offspring. If a seedling is struggling with drought, the mother tree, with its deep and extensive root system, can draw up water from a more reliable source and share it through the network. If the mother tree is attacked by a pest, it can send a warning signal to its seedlings, prompting them to activate their own defenses before the threat arrives. It is a complete and holistic form of parental care, a suite of behaviours that dramatically increases the chances that the next generation will survive. This nurturing behaviour is not entirely selfless. It is also a savvy evolutionary strategy. The seedlings that are growing around a mother tree are often its own, direct offspring. By supporting them, the mother tree is ensuring the survival and the propagation of its own genes. It is investing in its own genetic immortality. And the science of kin recognition has shown that this support is not indiscriminate. A mother tree will preferentially send more resources to its own kin than it will to the seedlings of other, unrelated trees. It can recognize its family, likely through the specific chemical signals released by their roots, and it favors them. But the story is even more complex and more generous than that. While a mother tree does favor its own kin, it does not completely abandon the other seedlings in its community. It will still send a smaller, but still significant amount of resources to the unrelated seedlings that are connected to its network. Why would it do this? Because the health of the community is essential for the health of the individual. A diverse, resilient, and thriving forest is a safer and more stable environment for everyone, including the mother tree and its own offspring. A forest with a dense, healthy understory is more resistant to invasive species. It maintains a more stable, humid microclimate, and it supports a richer and more diverse community of the beneficial microbes and fungi that everyone depends on. By supporting the entire community, the mother tree is strengthening the very ecosystem upon which its own long-term survival depends. It is an act of enlightened self-interest. To contemplate this quiet, underground flow of resources is to be profoundly moved. It is to see the forest not as a collection of disconnected, competing individuals, but as a deeply social and nurturing community. It is to see the great, old trees not as aloof and indifferent giants, but as caring, generous, and strategic parents. The forest floor, which once seemed like a brutal battlefield, is transformed before our eyes into a collective nursery, a place of support, of connection, and of hope. It is a powerful and beautiful reminder that the instinct to care for the young, to invest in the next generation, is not an invention of the animal kingdom. It is a deep, ancient, and fundamental wisdom that is woven into the very fabric of the living world. The forest is a family, and it takes care of its own. We have seen the forest's hidden network as a physical conduit, a biological plumbing system for the sharing of water and nutrients, but this is only one dimension of its function. The Wood Wide Web is not just a system for transport, it is a medium for communication. The dark, silent world of the soil is, in fact, alive with a constant and complex chemical conversation. The trees are talking to each other and to the vast community of organisms that live in the soil through a rich and subtle language that is spoken not with sounds, but with a complex vocabulary of molecules. The primary organ of this conversation, the tongue of the tree, is the root. Let us descend once more into the rhizosphere, the thin, vibrant layer of soil that immediately surrounds a living root. This is one of the most biologically active and chemically complex environments on the planet. It is a world that is saturated with information. The root of a tree is not a passive, inert object. It is an active and sensitive chemical broadcaster and receiver. It is constantly releasing a complex cocktail of organic compounds into the soil, a process known as root exudation. For a long time, this was thought to be a simple, unavoidable leakage, a waste of the plant's precious resources, but we now understand that this is a deliberate, highly regulated, and deeply meaningful act of communication. The root exudates are the words, the sentences, the very substance of the subterranean conversation. The first and most important conversation that a root has is with the microbial community. The plant is not just living in the soil, it is actively farming it. It uses its root exudates to cultivate a specific and beneficial community of bacteria and fungi. The sugars and amino acids in the exudates are a source of food, a payment that attracts and nourishes the microbes that the plant wants as its partners. The plant is, in essence, creating a designer microbiome, a hand-picked team of allies that will help it to thrive. It is sending out a chemical signal that says, "I am a friend. I have resources to share. Come and work with me." This conversation is incredibly specific. The chemical dialect of the root exudates is unique to each plant species. A bean plant releases a different blend of chemicals than a pine tree, and this specific blend will attract a different community of microbes. The plant is selecting for the partners that are best suited to its own unique needs. For example, a legume, like a clover or a pea, will release specific flavonoids into the soil. This chemical signal is detected by a particular type of bacteria called rhizobia. When the rhizobia receive this signal, they are activated and they swim towards the root. They then engage in a further complex chemical dialogue with the root that leads to the formation of a small nodular structure on the root. Inside this nodule, the rhizobia perform a remarkable feat of alchemy. They take the inert gaseous nitrogen from the air in the soil and fix it, converting it into a form of ammonia that the plant can use as a nutrient. The plant in return provides the bacteria with a safe home and a steady supply of sugar. This entire intricate and life-giving partnership begins with a single specific chemical conversation. But the roots are not just talking to the microbes, they are talking to each other. The root system of a tree is constantly sensing the chemical environment around it, and a key part of that environment is the exudates released by the roots of its neighbours. This allows the tree to recognise the other plants in its vicinity. It can tell who its neighbours are, and it can adjust its behaviour accordingly. The most fascinating aspect of this is the phenomenon of kin recognition. A tree can tell the difference between a root that belongs to a close relative, a kin, and a root that belongs to an unrelated stranger. The exact mechanism is still being studied, but it is likely based on the subtle, genetically determined variations in the chemical composition of the root exudates. The tree can, in a sense, recognise its own family's scent, and this recognition has a profound effect on the tree's behaviour. When a tree's roots encounter the roots of a stranger, the interaction is often competitive. The tree will accelerate the growth of its own roots, trying to occupy the available soil space and to claim a larger share of the available water and nutrients. It is a silent, underground arms race. But when a tree's roots encounter the roots of its own kin, the response is often the opposite. The tree will restrain the growth of its roots, it will reduce its competitive behaviour, and it will allow its root systems to overlap and to share the space more equitably. It is a form of familial courtesy, a biological deference to one's own relatives. This behaviour makes perfect evolutionary sense. By helping its own kin to survive and to thrive, the tree is indirectly promoting the success of its own genes. This subterranean conversation is also a key part of the forest's defensive strategy. When a root is damaged, either by a soil-dwelling insect or by a pathogen, it releases a specific chemical distress signal into the soil. This signal can be detected by the roots of neighbouring trees. This is a form of direct, root-to-root communication, a warning that travels through the soil from one individual to the next. The neighbouring trees, upon receiving this signal, can activate their own internal defence systems, preparing for the threat before it arrives. This chemical language of the roots is a form of intelligence, a slow, distributed, and deeply embodied form of cognition. The root system is not just a passive anchor. It is a vast, sensitive, and exploratory sensory organ. It is constantly tasting and smelling the world around it, gathering a huge amount of complex chemical information. It is mapping the location of nutrients, it is identifying its neighbours, it is sensing the presence of threats, and it is communicating with its partners, and it is integrating all of this information to make complex adaptive decisions about where and how to grow. This is not the fast, centralized intelligence of an animal brain. There is no central processor. The brain of the plant is the entire root system itself. The intelligence is distributed. Each of the thousands of individual root tips is acting as a small semi-autonomous agent, sensing its local environment and making simple decisions. And from the collective action of all of these individual agents, a complex, intelligent, and highly adaptive behavior emerges at the level of the whole organism. To contemplate this silent chemical conversation is to be filled with a sense of wonder at the hidden complexity of the world beneath our feet. It is to understand that the soil is not a dead, inert medium, but a living, vibrant, and information-rich environment. It is a place of constant negotiation, of cooperation, and of competition. It is a place where a rich and ancient language is being spoken, a language that we are only just beginning to learn how to decipher. The roots of the trees are not just drinking from the earth, they are talking to it, and they are listening to its replies. They are engaged in a quiet, constant, and deeply meaningful dialogue that sustains the entire magnificent edifice of the forest. The conversations of the forest are not confined to the dark, subterranean world of the roots. They also take place in the open, sunlit world of the air, a realm that we, as visual and auditory creatures, believe we understand. But here too, a secret language is being spoken, a language that is carried not on sound waves, but on the gentle and invisible currents of the wind. When a tree is under attack, when its physical integrity is breached by the chewing mouth parts of an herbivore, it does not suffer in silence, it screams. But this is a scream that has no sound. It is a silent, fragrant, and highly specific chemical message, a plume of volatile organic compounds VOCs that it synthesizes and releases from its wounded leaves. This is the airborne scream of the tree, a sophisticated and multi-layered communication that serves as a warning, a cry for help, and a testament to the remarkable and unexpected ways in which the silent kingdom of plants interacts with the world. Let us imagine a single, tranquil willow tree growing by a riverbank. Its leaves are busy with the quiet, sacred work of photosynthesis, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. But this piece is about to be shattered. A colony of tent caterpillars, having recently hatched, begins its voracious assault. The tiny mandibles of the caterpillars tear into the soft green tissue of a leaf. This physical damage, this wound, is the trigger. But the tree's response is not just a passive reaction to injury. The chemical compounds present in the caterpillar's saliva provide a specific, identifying signature. The tree does not just know that it is being wounded, it knows who is wounding it. And this knowledge shapes the entire complex conversation that is about to unfold. The first part of this conversation is an internal one. The damaged cells in the wounded leaf produce a cascade of plant hormones, most notably jasmonic acid. This hormone acts as a mobile internal alarm signal. It travels through the plant's vascular system, its phloem, carrying a message from the site of the attack to every other part of the tree, to the other leaves, to the stem, and even down to the roots. The message is clear and urgent. We are under attack by a chewing insect. Prepare for battle. In response to this internal signal, the undamaged leaves on the tree begin to alter their chemistry. They start to produce and accumulate a variety of defensive compounds. They might increase the concentration of tannins and phenols, substances that bind to proteins in an animal's digestive system, making the leaves bitter, difficult to digest, and low in nutritional value. They might synthesize alkaloids or other toxins that are specifically designed to sicken or even kill the caterpillars. The tree is mounting a systemic, coordinated, and body-wide defense, a chemical hardening of its own tissues to make itself a less palatable and more dangerous meal. But this internal conversation is relatively slow. It can take hours for the hormonal signal to travel from a leaf on an upper branch all the way down to the lower parts of the tree. And in the world of herbivory, time is of the essence. And so the tree employs a second, much faster method of communication. It begins its external airborne broadcast. The wounded leaves start to synthesize and release a complex and specific blend of VOCs into the surrounding air. These are small, lightweight molecules that can evaporate easily and travel on the wind. This is not an accidental, uncontrolled leakage of chemicals from the wound. It is an active, controlled, and highly regulated process. The tree is intentionally manufacturing and releasing a specific, fragrant message. The first and most immediate audience for this airborne message is the tree itself. A leaf on a downwind branch can detect the chemical scream being released by its wounded upwind neighbor. The surface of the leaf is covered in receptors that can recognize these specific VOCs. This airborne, internal communication is much faster than the slow circulatory hormonal signal. It allows the entire tree to get the message and to begin mounting its defenses almost instantly. The tree is, in a sense, smelling its own injury and reacting to it. But the audience for this broadcast is far wider. The plume of VOCs is carried on the wind, and it can be detected by the other willow trees growing nearby. These neighbouring trees are, in effect, eavesdropping on the scream of their wounded compatriot. Their leaves too have the ability to perceive and to interpret this chemical message. When they smell the specific blend of VOCs that signifies a caterpillar attack on a nearby willow, they understand the message. It is a clear and unambiguous warning. Danger is near. The caterpillars are in the neighbourhood, and they act on this information. Even though they are not yet under attack, themselves, they will begin to activate their own defensive chemistry. They will start to produce the same anti-herbivore compounds that their wounded neighbour is producing. They are preparing for the attack before it even happens. This remarkable phenomenon, first discovered in the early 1980s through pioneering studies on willows and alder trees, was revolutionary. It was the first concrete proof that plants could communicate with each other, that they were not just passive, isolated individuals. The idea of talking trees was initially met with great skepticism, dismissed by many as a fanciful notion. But in the decades since, the evidence has become overwhelming. We now know that this kind of airborne, community-wide alarm system is a common and vital strategy used by a vast array of plant species, from forest trees to agricultural crops like lima beans and tomatoes. The trees in a forest are not a silent, disconnected crowd. They are a community that is constantly sharing information, a neighbourhood watch that is always on alert for the first sign of trouble. The sophistication of this chemical language is truly astonishing. The message is not just a generic help. The specific blend of VOCs that a plant releases can convey a huge amount of detailed information. The chemical scream is a highly specific signature. The plant can vary the composition of the VOC blend, the ratio of the different molecules, to tell a very specific story. The signature for an attack by a chewing caterpillar is different from the signature for an attack by a sap-sucking aphid. The signature for a fungal infection is different from the signature for a bacterial disease. The plant is not just saying that it is being hurt, it is providing a detailed and accurate diagnosis of the problem. It is identifying the perpetrator. This specificity is absolutely crucial because it allows for a highly targeted and appropriate response, not just from the neighbouring plants, but from another, even more surprising audience. The third trophic level, the predators and parasites of the herbivores. The airborne scream is not just a warning, it is a cry for help. It is a beacon that is specifically designed to attract the natural enemies of the plant's attacker. Let us return once more to our willow tree under attack by caterpillars. The specific blend of VOCs that it is releasing into the air is a powerful and irresistible attractant for a tiny, predatory insect, the parasitic wasp. The female wasp is a hunter, and she is constantly searching for a host in which to lay her eggs. She is, in a sense, a professional assassin, and she has learned, through millions of years of coevolution, to recognize the specific scent of a caterpillar attack. The VOCs released by the willow tree are a dinner bell for her. She can detect this chemical signal from a great distance, and she follows the fragrant trail back to its source. She hones in on the wounded willow tree, and then, using other short-range cues, she locates the caterpillars that are feeding on its leaves. She lands on a caterpillar, and with a quick, precise injection from her ovipositor, she lays her eggs inside its living, wriggling body. The willow tree has successfully summoned a bodyguard. It has recruited an ally from an entirely different kingdom of life to fight its battle for it. This is a beautiful and stunningly complex tritrophic interaction. The plant, the herbivore, and the predator are all locked in a perpetual co-evolutionary arms race, a silent and fragrant game of espionage and information warfare. The plant evolves a more specific and more detectable scream. The herbivore, in turn, may evolve strategies to avoid detection, perhaps by feeding in a way that minimizes the damage and the release of the signal, or even by sequestering the plant's defensive chemicals and using them for its own defense. The predator, in turn, evolves an even more sensitive and discerning sense of smell, allowing it to distinguish between the different dialects of the plant's scream and to find its preferred host with greater accuracy. The air, which to our own, limited human senses appears to be a clear, transparent and empty space, is in fact a rich and complex medium of communication. It is a world that is constantly swirling with a stream of invisible, fragrant messages, a world of invitations and warnings, of seductions and screams. The plants are the master chemists of our planet, the great perfumers of the natural world. They have learned to use the wind as their postal service, to use the simple, volatile molecules of their own bodies as the words and sentences of a rich, ancient and life-saving language. To contemplate this airborne conversation is to be filled with a sense of wonder at the intricate and unexpected connections that bind the living world together. It is to understand that communication is a universal property of life and that it takes many strange and beautiful forms. The silent forest is, in fact, a place of constant chatter. It is a world of whispers, of warnings, and of screams. We just need to learn how to quiet our own noisy world and to listen, with a new kind of sense, to the fragrant, silent, and profound conversation that is happening all around us. The airborne scream of a wounded tree is a powerful and effective method of communication, a long-distance broadcast that can alert an entire community to a potential threat. But it is not without its limitations. A message sent upon the wind is, by its very nature, a public broadcast. It can be overheard by anyone, friend or foe. It is also dependent on the vagaries of the weather. A change in the wind direction can send the message to the wrong audience or prevent it from reaching its intended target altogether. And while it is fast, it is not instantaneous. For a truly secure, reliable, and targeted line of communication, the trees of the forest have another, even more, remarkable system. They have a private encrypted network, a biological telegraph line that runs beneath the forest floor. This is the fungal network, the Wood Wide Web, repurposed as a high-speed subterranean information superhighway. Let us return to our willow tree, under attack by caterpillars. We have seen how it releases a plume of volatile chemicals into the air to warn its neighbours. But at the same time, a second parallel conversation is beginning to take place. The stress of the herbivore attack triggers a cascade of chemical changes not just in the leaves, but throughout the entire tree. These signals travel down the trunk and into the roots. The roots then begin to talk to their fungal partners, sending a new and urgent chemical message directly into the mycorrhizal network. This is a different kind of message from the airborne scream. It is not a public broadcast, but a targeted point-to-point communication. The message enters the vast interconnected web of fungal hyphae, and it travels through this network, from the roots of the attacked tree to the roots of the other trees that are connected to the same fungal mycelium. It is a silent, underground, and highly efficient transfer of information. It is the fungal telegraph. The discovery of this underground communication channel is even more recent and more revolutionary than the discovery of airborne signalling. It has been made possible by a series of incredibly elegant and clever experiments. In one such experiment, scientists grew several small pine seedlings in a container. They allowed the roots of the seedlings to become colonized by a mycorrhizal fungus, creating a shared underground network. They then took one of the seedlings, the donor tree, and enclosed it in a plastic bag, completely isolating its leaves and stem from the air of the other seedlings. This was a crucial step. It ensured that any communication between the donor tree and the other receiver trees could not be happening through the air. The only possible channel of communication was the shared underground fungal network. The scientists then infested the donor tree with a hungry herbivore. As the donor tree was attacked, the scientists monitored the chemistry of the nearby healthy receiver trees. And they saw something remarkable. Within hours, the receiver trees, which were not under attack and could not have smelled any airborne signals from the donor, began to ramp up their own defensive chemistry. They started to produce the same anti-herbivore compounds that the attacked tree was producing. They had received a warning. The message had been sent, not through the air, but through the soil transmitted along the silent thread-like pathways of the fungal telegraph. This underground network has several distinct advantages over the airborne system. Firstly, it is more reliable. It is not dependent on the wind. The message will be delivered to every single tree that is connected to the network, regardless of its position. Secondly, it is more secure. It is a private conversation, a targeted message that is sent only to the other members of the network. It is less likely to be intercepted by a competing plant or by an herbivore that might have evolved to use the plant's own alarm signal to find its next meal. And thirdly, it can carry a different, and perhaps even more complex kind of information. While the airborne VOCs are excellent for a rapid, widespread alarm, the fungal network may be a channel for a more sustained and nuanced dialogue. The chemical signals sent through the network can be more complex, less volatile, and can persist for longer. The network can transmit not just a simple warning, but a detailed report on the health and the status of the individual trees in the community. It can carry information about nutrient deficiencies, about water stress, and about the presence of soil-borne pathogens. It is the central nervous system of the forest, a vast, distributed and biochemical brain that is constantly monitoring the health of the community and coordinating its collective response. Let us contemplate the nature of this fungal telegraph. The fungal mycelium is a living, dynamic and intelligent network. It is not just a passive set of copper wires. The fungus is an active participant in this conversation. It is the switchboard operator, the network administrator. The fungus itself has an interest in the health of the entire forest, as every tree is a potential or an actual source of the carbon it needs to survive. It is therefore in the fungus's own best interest to ensure that these warning signals are transmitted efficiently and reliably. A healthy forest is a well-fed fungus. The fungus may even be able to regulate the flow of information through its network. It may be able to prioritize certain messages, to amplify certain signals, and to direct the flow of information to the trees that need it most. It may be able to integrate the information it is receiving from hundreds of different trees to get a big picture view of the overall health of the forest, and to use this information to regulate the allocation of resources and the coordination of defences. The fungus is not just the telegraph line, it is the telegraph operator, and it is a very smart one. The existence of this fungal telegraph forces us to completely reimagine the nature of a forest. The trees are not just communicating in a general broadcast sense, they are networking. They are linked in a secure, private, and highly efficient information-sharing grid. The forest is a community that is constantly in touch, its members bound together by a hidden, living, and intelligent web of communication. This discovery also has profound implications for our own human relationship with the forest. When we walk through a forest, we're walking over a vast and active communication network. The ground beneath our feet is humming with a silent, complex, and deeply meaningful conversation. When we clear-cut a forest, we are not just killing the individual trees, we are destroying the network, we are severing the lines of communication, we are creating a community of deaf and isolated orphans. A plantation of trees, even if they are all of the same species, if it lacks the rich, ancient and diverse fungal community of a natural forest, is a silent forest. It is a collection of individuals that have lost the ability to talk to each other, to support each other, and to act as a collective. To contemplate the fungal telegraph is to be filled with a sense of awe at the sheer hidden complexity of the natural world. It is to realize that the most profound connections are often the ones that are invisible. It is a powerful and humbling lesson in the wisdom of nature, a lesson that reminds us that the strength of any community lies in the quality and the integrity of its connections. The forest is not just a community, it is a conspiracy, a quiet, cooperative, and life-sustaining breathing together of the trees and the fungi, a silent underground conversation that has been going on for hundreds of millions of years. The defensive strategies of a tree are a masterclass in layered and sophisticated security. We have seen how a tree, when attacked, can harden its own tissues with toxic chemicals. We have seen how it can warn its neighbours, both through the air and through the underground network, allowing the entire community to prepare for a threat. But the tree has another, even more audacious and remarkable trick up its sleeve. It does not just play defense, it plays offense. Unable to move, to flee, or to physically fight back against its attackers, the tree has evolved the ability to summon a powerful and highly effective army of allies. It has learned how to call for bodyguards. This is the story of how plants recruit mercenaries from the animal kingdom, a stunning example of inter-kingdom communication, and a beautiful, if sometimes brutal, illustration of the principle that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let us return one last time to our willow tree, which is being devoured by tent caterpillars. We have seen how the tree responds by releasing a specific and complex blend of volatile organic compounds VOCs into the air. We have understood this as an airborne scream, a warning to its neighbours. But this is only half the story. This chemical message has another, very specific and very different intended audience. That audience is the parasitic wasp. The parasitic wasp is a tiny, delicate, and often overlooked insect, but it is a ferocious and highly efficient predator. The female wasp spends her life searching for a very specific type of host, often a particular species of caterpillar, in which to lay her eggs. For the wasp, finding this host is the single most important task of her life, and she is a master of detection. She has evolved an incredibly sensitive sense of smell, her antennae a pair of exquisite chemical detecting instruments. And one of the things she has learned to smell through millions of years of coevolution is the specific scent of a caterpillar attack. The blend of VOCs released by the wounded willow tree is not just a generic distress signal. It is a highly specific, information-rich beacon. The chemical signature is a complex message that says, a willow tree is being damaged, and the culprit is a tent caterpillar. For the parasitic wasp, this is an irresistible advertisement. It is a clear and reliable signal that her specific target, her prey, is present. The tree, in its moment of distress, is providing the wasp with the exact information she needs to find her next victim. The wasp detects this chemical plume from a great distance and follows it back to its source. She hones in on the specific wounded tree and then, using other short-range cues like the sight of the caterpillar and the smell of its droppings, she locates her target. She lands on the soft, fleshy body of the caterpillar, and with a quick and precise injection from her sharp ovipositor, she deposits her eggs inside its living body. For the caterpillar, this is the beginning of the end. For the wasp, it is the successful completion of her reproductive mission. And for the willow tree, it is salvation. The wasp eggs will hatch inside the caterpillar, and the tiny larvae will begin to consume the caterpillar from the inside out, carefully avoiding the vital organs at first to keep their host alive for as long as possible. The caterpillar, now a living incubator for its own doom, will often stop feeding. The attack on the willow tree has been neutralized. The tree, by releasing its fragrant chemical scream, has successfully summoned a tiny winged assassin to do its bidding. This is a beautiful and stunningly complex tritrophic interaction, a relationship that involves 3 different levels of the food chain: the plant, the producer, the caterpillar, the herbivore, and the wasp, the predator. It is a relationship that is mediated entirely by the flow of information, by the chemical language of the tree. The tree is not a passive victim in this drama. It is an active and manipulative player. It is exploiting the pre-existing antagonistic relationship between the caterpillar and the wasp for its own benefit. This strategy of calling for bodyguards is not unique to the willow tree. It is a widespread and common phenomenon throughout the plant kingdom. Many different plants, when attacked by their specific herbivores, will release a specific blend of VOCs that will attract the specific predators or parasites of that herbivore. A corn plant being eaten by an armyworm caterpillar will release a scent that attracts a specific parasitic wasp. A bean plant being attacked by spider mites will release a different scent that attracts a predatory mite, which loves to eat spider mites. The plant is not just calling for help. It is calling for the right kind of help. The sophistication of this system is breathtaking. The plant is not just releasing a single chemical. It is releasing a complex blend, a chemical chord, and it can vary the notes in this chord to tell a very detailed story. The chemical blend can change depending on the age of the herbivore, or on the density of the herbivore population. The plant is providing its bodyguards with real-time, tactical intelligence about the nature of the threat. And the bodyguards, the predators and parasites, have become exquisitely attuned to this language. They can learn to associate a new, unfamiliar scent with the presence of their prey. In one experiment, scientists exposed a plant to a novel threat it had never encountered before. The plant released a new, unfamiliar blend of VOCs. At first, the local parasitic wasps did not respond to this new scent. But after a short period of training, during which they were able to find their prey on this new plant, they quickly learned to recognize the new scent. They had learned a new word in the plant's chemical vocabulary. This ability of plants to recruit allies from the animal kingdom is a powerful testament to the interconnectedness of life. It shows that the boundaries between the kingdoms are not as rigid as we once thought. The plant and the animal worlds are engaged in a constant and complex dialogue, a dialogue of cooperation and of manipulation, of mutualism and of exploitation. To contemplate this act of calling for bodyguards is to see the plant in a new and powerful light. The plant is not a helpless victim. It is a strategist. It is a spy master. It is a quiet, patient, and incredibly sophisticated manipulator of the world around it. It has learned to turn its own vulnerability into a weapon. Its cry of pain is also a call to arms. It is a beautiful and brutal reminder that in the intricate co-evolutionary dance of the natural world, information is the ultimate currency, and communication is the ultimate power. The silent, stationary tree, rooted to the spot, has found a way to command a mobile army, to direct a squadron of winged assassins, and to win a war without ever moving an inch. We have seen the tree as a communicator, a strategist, and a nurturer. But to perform these complex roles, a tree must possess another, even more fundamental and surprising capacity: the capacity to learn. It must be able to record its past experiences, to store this information in a meaningful way, and to use this information to modify its future behavior. In other words, a tree must have a memory. This is perhaps the most challenging and paradigm-shifting idea of all. The concept of memory is something we associate almost exclusively with a brain, with the complex neural architecture of an animal. But the forest is teaching us that a brain is not the only way to remember. Life has evolved other, stranger, and more ancient forms of memory, a memory that is not stored in the synapses of a neuron but is written into the very chemistry, the very structure, and the very genes of a living being. Let us contemplate a young tree growing in a forest. In its first few years, it experiences a severe drought. The lack of water is a profound stress, a life-threatening event. The tree responds by closing its stomata, by producing stress-related hormones, and by slowing its growth to a bare minimum. It survives, but only just. The memory of this event, the trauma of this drought, is not lost. It is recorded. It is encoded in the physical and chemical being of the tree. The most obvious and literal form of this memory is written in the tree's own body, in the rings of its wood. The narrow, compressed growth ring from that year will forever remain as a physical scar, a permanent historical record of the hardship it endured. A dendrochronologist, a scientist who studies tree rings, could look at a cross-section of this tree hundreds of years in the future and say with certainty, in this year, the tree suffered. But the memory is deeper and more active than just a physical scar. The experience of the drought has changed the tree. It has learned that its environment is one in which severe drought is a possibility. This experience triggers long-term changes in the tree's physiology and development. It may, in subsequent years, allocate more of its resources to growing a deeper and more extensive root system, making it better equipped to find water in the future. It may alter the density of the stomata on its new leaves, or produce a thicker, waxy cuticle to reduce water loss. It has modified its own personal body plan in response to its past experience. It has learned from its suffering. This memory is also stored at a chemical level. The experience of a stress, whether it is a drought, an insect attack, or a disease, can lead to a process of priming. The tree, having survived the initial attack, remains in a state of heightened alert. It maintains a higher baseline level of defensive chemicals and keeps the genetic machinery for producing these defenses on standby. When the same stress occurs again in the future, the primed tree can mount a much faster, stronger, and more effective response than a naive tree that has never experienced the threat before. It is a form of immunological memory, a biochemical readiness that is born from past experience. But the most profound and exciting frontier in our understanding of plant memory is the discovery that these experiences can be recorded at the level of the genes themselves. This is the field of epigenetics. We are accustomed to thinking of our genetic code, our DNA, as a fixed and unchanging blueprint that we inherit from our parents. But epigenetics has revealed that there is another layer of information that is laid down on top of the DNA, a layer of chemical tags and markers that can control which genes are turned on and which are turned off. These epigenetic marks do not change the DNA sequence itself, but they change the way the DNA is read and expressed. And crucially, these marks can be added or removed in response to environmental experiences. When our tree experiences the severe drought, this stressful event can cause specific epigenetic marks to be added to its DNA. Certain genes, perhaps those involved in water conservation or stress resistance, may be switched on or made more accessible. Other genes, perhaps those involved in rapid growth, may be switched off or silenced. These epigenetic changes can be stable and long-lasting. They can persist for the entire life of the tree. The memory of the drought is now written, not just in the wood, but in the very grammar of the tree's genetic code. The tree's life story, its personal autobiography of struggle and survival, is being recorded in real time in its own genome. This epigenetic memory is a form of cellular learning. Every cell in the tree carries a record of the stresses that the organism has faced. This is a distributed, decentralized form of memory, a memory that is embodied in the entire organism, from the tip of its roots to the top of its leaves. There is no central hippocampus where the memories are stored. The tree is its own memory. And here is the most remarkable and controversial part of the story. There is growing evidence that these epigenetic memories, these lessons learned from a lifetime of experience, may not die with the individual tree. They may be heritable. The epigenetic marks that a tree acquires during its lifetime can, in some cases, be passed down to its offspring through its seeds. The young seedling that sprouts from the seed of our drought-surviving tree may be born with the epigenetic memory of a drought it has never experienced. It may be born primed, already equipped with the genetic and physiological adaptations that will make it more resilient to a dry environment. The mother tree has not just given its offspring its genes, it has given it its memories. It has passed on the wisdom it has acquired from its own personal struggle. This idea, the inheritance of acquired characteristics, was once a biological heresy, a Lamarckian notion that was long thought to have been disproven. But the science of epigenetics is forcing us to reconsider. It suggests that evolution may not just be a slow, random process of genetic mutation and natural selection. It may also have a faster, more directed component, a mechanism that allows the lessons learned by one generation to be directly transmitted to the next. The forest is not just evolving, it is learning, and it is passing that learning down through time. To contemplate the memory of a tree is to be confronted with the profound and mysterious nature of life itself. It forces us to discard our narrow, brain-centric definitions of learning and of memory. It shows us that the ability to record experience and to adapt future behavior is a fundamental property of living systems, a property that has found many different and beautiful forms of expression. The tree is a living historian, a silent, patient archivist of the years. Its body is a library, and its genes are a living, evolving text, a story that is constantly being written and rewritten by the sun, the wind, the rain, and the challenges of a long and complex life. The memory of a tree is the memory of the world itself, recorded in the slow, beautiful, and deeply intelligent language of wood, of chemistry, and of life. The life of a great mother tree is a long and patient accumulation of wisdom. For hundreds, or even thousands of years, it stands as a silent witness to the changing seasons, to the passing storms, to the droughts, the fires, the insect outbreaks, and the slow, inexorable turning of the centuries. Every one of these experiences is recorded, as we have seen, in the very fabric of its being, in the rings of its wood, in the chemistry of its cells, and in the epigenetic marks on its DNA. The mother tree is a living library, a vast and ancient archive of ecological knowledge. But what happens to this library when the tree's long life finally comes to an end? Does all of this accumulated wisdom, this priceless legacy of experience, simply vanish as the great tree decays and returns to the soil? The answer, we are now beginning to understand, is a profound and beautiful no. In its final years, and even in the moment of its death, a mother tree performs one last great and generous act. It passes on its wisdom, it bequeaths its legacy to the community that it has nurtured for so long. Let us contemplate a great ancient fir tree at the end of its life. It has been weakened by age, by a lightning strike, or by a fungal disease. It knows, in its own slow, biological way, that its time is coming to an end. It can no longer maintain its vast structure, and its ability to photosynthesize is beginning to decline. But it does not simply fade away. It begins a deliberate and controlled process of disassembly, a final great act of redistribution. In its final seasons, the dying mother tree begins to move its vast stored resources. It begins to liquidate its assets. The huge reserves of carbon, of nitrogen, of phosphorus, and of other essential nutrients that it has accumulated in its wood, its roots, and its tissues over the centuries are mobilized. And it sends this great final inheritance out into the community. Through the vast interconnected fungal network that it has commanded for so long, it pumps a huge pulse of life-giving resources. This is not the gentle, nurturing flow of a healthy tree supporting its young. This is a flood, a final, massive transfer of wealth. The primary beneficiaries of this legacy are the trees that are directly connected to it, particularly the young trees, its own kin, that have been growing in its understory. This sudden, massive influx of resources can be a life-changing event. For these young trees, it is a shot of fertilizer and energy that can allow them to grow rapidly, to break through into the canopy, and to take the place of their fallen parent. The mother tree, in its death, is directly facilitating the succession of the next generation. It is a final, powerful act of parental care. But the legacy is more than just a transfer of nutrients. The mother tree is also passing on its wisdom, its information. The chemical signals that accompany this great resource dump are a rich and complex message. The tree is sending out a final, detailed report on its own life story. It is passing on the defensive chemicals it has developed, the memory of the pests and the diseases it has fought. The young trees that receive this chemical inheritance are, in a sense, being vaccinated. They are receiving a dose of their parents' own, acquired immunity, making them better prepared to face the challenges of their world. And as we have seen, the most profound legacy of all may be the epigenetic one. The seeds that the mother tree has produced in its final years are carrying the epigenetic memories of its long life. The seedlings that sprout from these seeds are born with a form of inherited wisdom. They are born with a genetic head start, their genes already primed and configured for the specific challenges of the environment in which their mother lived and died. The wisdom of the mother tree is not lost. It is reincarnated in its children. Even the physical death of the tree, the great crashing fall to the forest floor, is an act of creation. The death of a giant creates a sudden dramatic gap in the canopy. For the first time in centuries, direct, unfiltered sunlight can reach the forest floor. This is the moment that the patient, waiting understory has been preparing for. The young trees, nurtured for decades by their mother's underground support and now fortified by her final, deathbed inheritance, are perfectly positioned to take advantage of this new opportunity. A great upward race for the light begins, a race to fill the void left by the fallen giant. The death of the one is the signal for the rise of the many, and the physical body of the fallen tree, the great log on the forest floor, is not a corpse, it is a cradle. It becomes a new and vital hub of life in the ecosystem. It is a vast, slowly decaying storehouse of carbon and nutrients, a nurse log that will feed the forest for decades to come. Its decaying wood becomes a sponge for water, a moist and fertile seedbed where new seedlings, including its own, can take root. It becomes a habitat for a vast community of mosses, of fungi, of insects, and of microbes. The body of the mother tree becomes the foundation for a new generation of life. In its death, it has become a source of immense and enduring life. To contemplate this passing on of wisdom is to see death in a new and more beautiful light. In the world of the forest, death is not an ending. It is a transformation. It is a necessary and creative part of a great cyclical process of renewal. The individual tree dies, but the forest, the community, the superorganism lives on, enriched and informed by the life and the death of its members. The wisdom is not lost, it is recycled. The legacy is not forgotten, it is embodied in the next generation. This understanding has profound implications for how we view our own place in the world. It challenges our human fear of death and our obsession with individual permanence. The forest teaches us a different lesson. It teaches us that our true legacy lies not in what we accumulate for ourselves, but in what we pass on to the community and to the generations that will follow us. It teaches us that a life well lived is a life that contributes to the health and the wisdom of the whole. The mother tree in its final, generous act shows us the beauty of letting go. It shows us that the ultimate purpose of a long life is to become a source of life for others. It is a quiet, profound, and deeply moving lesson in generosity, in legacy, and in the beautiful, cyclical, and interconnected nature of all living things. The great tree falls, but the forest remembers. We have journeyed deep into the hidden world of the forest, uncovering a realm of constant, quiet, and complex communication. We have seen trees that nurture their young, that warn their neighbors of danger, that recruit allies, and that remember their past experiences. The evidence is overwhelming. The forest is not a silent, disconnected collection of individuals. It is a social, cooperative, and deeply interconnected system. This forces us to ask a profound and challenging question. If the forest can sense its environment, if it can process information, if it can learn, if it can remember, and if it can make complex adaptive decisions, is it not, in some meaningful way, intelligent? This is a radical idea, one that pushes against our most fundamental human-centric definitions of intelligence. We are accustomed to thinking of intelligence as something that requires a brain, a centralized, discrete organ of computation made of neurons. We see it as a property of individual animals, but the forest offers us a glimpse of another kind of intelligence, a form of cognition that is utterly alien to our own. It is an intelligence that is slow, ancient, and decentralized. It is a distributed intelligence, a form of swarm consciousness where the mind is not located in any single place, but is the emergent property of the entire interconnected network. The forest itself is the brain. Let us try to visualize this great green intelligence. The individual trees are the neurons of this brain. Each tree is a single processing node, an agent that is capable of sensing its local environment, of storing information, and of making simple, rule-based decisions. It can sense the light, the water, the nutrients, the temperature, and the chemical signals in its immediate vicinity. It can access its own embodied memories of past events. And based on this information, it can make decisions to grow a root in a certain direction, to produce a defensive chemical, to open or close its stomata. The vast underground mycorrhizal network is the neural network, the intricate web of connections that links these individual neurons together. The fungal hyphae are the axons and the dendrites, the biological wiring that allows for the transmission of information across the entire system. The chemical and electrical signals that travel through this network are the neurotransmitters, the language that allows the different parts of the brain to communicate with each other. Unlike our own brain, which is encased in a skull and is clearly separate from the body it controls, this forest brain is inseparable from its body. The body is the brain. The intelligence is embodied and distributed throughout the entire ecosystem. There is no central command center, no single self that is in charge. The decision-making is collective. The complex, adaptive, and seemingly intelligent behavior of the forest as a whole emerges from the simple local interactions of its millions of individual components. It is a form of swarm intelligence, similar to what we see in an ant colony, a flock of birds, or a school of fish. Each individual ant is not particularly smart, but the colony as a whole can solve complex problems, build intricate structures, and respond to its environment with a remarkable collective wisdom. The forest is a swarm, but it is a swarm that is rooted in the earth, a swarm that operates on a timescale of seasons, of years, and of centuries. Let us consider how this distributed brain might think. A thought in this context is not a fleeting, abstract idea, but a slow, cascading wave of biochemical change. Imagine a drought begins in one part of the forest. A single tree, a sensory node on the periphery of the network, detects the change. Its roots sense the drying soil. It begins to produce stress hormones. This is the initial sensation. This tree then sends a chemical signal, a message of distress, out into the fungal network. This signal propagates through the web, from tree to tree, from node to node. This is the process of thinking. As the signal spreads, each tree that receives it integrates this new information with its own local knowledge. A tree in a wetter part of the forest might compare the drought signal it is receiving with the fact that its own roots are still finding plenty of water. The network is processing the information, building a complex forest-wide map of the environmental conditions. The decision is the collective response that emerges from this process. Trees throughout the forest might begin to close their stomata to conserve water, even before they have experienced the drought directly. The network might begin to reroute water from the wetter areas to the drier areas. The community as a whole adapts its behavior, based on the distributed processing of the initial sensory input. The forest has thought about the problem of the drought, and it has decided on a course of action. This form of intelligence is, by its very nature, slow. A thought in the forest brain might take days, weeks, or even months to propagate and to be processed. This is a timescale that is almost incomprehensible to our own fast-paced animal minds. We live our lives in a flurry of seconds and minutes. The forest lives in a slow, deep, and patient present. Its intelligence is not the quick, clever intelligence of a problem-solving primate. It is the slow, deep, and cumulative wisdom of an ancient living system. This concept of a distributed botanical intelligence is not just a philosophical metaphor. It is a powerful and emerging scientific paradigm. Researchers are now using the tools of network theory, of complexity science, and of computer modeling to understand the dynamics of these forest networks. They are discovering that these biological networks share many of the same mathematical properties as other complex information processing systems like the human brain and the internet. They exhibit properties like small world connectivity and scale-free architecture, which are the hallmarks of efficient and resilient networks. To contemplate the forest as a brain is to be humbled. It is to recognize that our own particular brand of intelligence, the fast, centralized, and individualistic intelligence of the animal kingdom, is not the only or even the most successful form of intelligence on this planet. The slow, collective and cooperative intelligence of the plant kingdom has been successfully managing the health of our planet's ecosystems for hundreds of millions of years. It is an intelligence that is based not on competition and on the survival of the fittest individual, but on connection, on communication, and on the health of the entire interconnected whole. It challenges us to broaden our definition of what it means to be intelligent, to be aware, and to be alive. It suggests that consciousness may not be a rare and precious commodity, confined to the skulls of a few clever animals. It may be a fundamental and emergent property of any sufficiently complex, interconnected and information processing system. The universe may be filled with many different kinds of minds, many different kinds of thoughts, and we're only just beginning to recognize the existence of the great green and silent mind that has been thinking slowly and deeply all around us, all along. The forest is not just a resource to be managed or a landscape to be admired. It is a fellow intelligence, a vast, ancient and deeply wise being from which we have much to learn. Water is the lifeblood of the forest. It is the solvent in which the chemistry of life happens, the medium that carries the essential nutrients from the soil to the leaves, and the source of the electrons that power the great photosynthetic engine of the planet. For a tree, the constant upward flow of water from its roots to its leaves is as vital and as non-negotiable as the beating of our own heart. But the availability of water in a forest is rarely uniform. The landscape is a patchwork of wet and dry. A low-lying hollow may be damp and marshy, while a south-facing rocky slope just a few meters away may be parched and dry. A single, passing rain shower may drench one part of the forest while leaving another untouched. In a world where each tree is an isolated individual, this patchiness would create a stark and brutal reality of haves and have-nots. The trees in the wet patches would thrive, while the trees in the dry patches would wither and die. But the forest is not a world of isolated individuals, it is a connected community. And through the same remarkable underground network that allows it to share food and information, the forest has also evolved a sophisticated and life-saving system for the sharing of its most precious and fundamental resource, water. Let us return to the mycorrhizal network, the vast subterranean web of fungal hyphae that connects the roots of the trees. We have understood this network as a marketplace for the trading of carbon and nutrients, and as a telegraph system for the transmission of information. But it is also quite simply a plumbing system. The fine, thread-like hyphae of the fungus are incredibly efficient at absorbing water from the soil, far more efficient than the tree's own roots. And this water, once absorbed into the fungal network, can move freely throughout the entire interconnected mycelium. The network is a vast shared and external circulatory system, a hydraulic grid that links the root systems of hundreds of different trees. This shared plumbing system allows for a remarkable and profoundly important phenomenon, the hydraulic redistribution of water. The network acts as a great equalizer, moving water from the areas where it is abundant to the areas where it is scarce. It is a form of communal irrigation, a silent, underground and highly efficient water trade that benefits the entire forest community. Let us imagine a large mature mother tree growing in a low-lying, damp part of the forest. Its deep, powerful roots have access to a reliable source of groundwater. It is water-rich. A few dozen meters away, on a higher, sunnier slope, a small young seedling is growing in a patch of dry, shallow soil. It is water-stressed. In a disconnected world, the seedling would be doomed. But in the connected forest, their fates are linked. Both the mother tree and the seedling are plugged into the same shared fungal network. During the day, the mother tree is pulling huge quantities of water up from the deep soil and sending it up to its leaves for transpiration. But not all of the water goes up. A portion of it is diverted. It flows from the tree's roots into the fungal network. This water then travels through the microscopic pipe-like hyphae from the water-rich zone around the mother tree towards the water-poor zone around the struggling seedling. The water is moving down a pressure gradient, from an area of high water potential to an area of low water potential. The fungal network is acting as a bridge, a siphon, connecting the two disparate environments. The water that was absorbed by the mother tree is then released by the fungus into the dry soil around the seedling's roots, creating a small localized zone of higher moisture. The seedling can then absorb this water, a life-saving gift from its distant, well-hydrated neighbor. This process is not just a one-way flow from the big trees to the small trees. It is a dynamic, multi-directional system that is constantly balancing the water potential across the entire forest. The process can also work in reverse. At night, when the trees have closed their stomata and are no longer transpiring, the direction of the flow can change. The deep-rooted trees may continue to pull water up from the groundwater, and this water can then be released into the upper, drier layers of the soil via the fungal network, effectively recharging the topsoil with moisture that will be available to the shallower-rooted plants the next day. This process, known as hydraulic lift, is a vital service that the deep-rooted trees provide to the entire ecosystem. The water trade is not just about sharing between different locations, it is also about sharing between different species. A deep-rooted pine tree might be sharing water with a shallow-rooted maple tree. A drought-tolerant oak might be supporting a more water-sensitive birch during a dry spell. The network connects not just individuals, but entire, diverse communities, creating a level of interdependence and mutual support that we're only just beginning to appreciate. The scientific evidence for this water trade is compelling. Researchers have used stable isotopes of water, so-called heavy water, to trace its movement through the ecosystem. They can inject a small amount of this heavy water into the soil around one tree, and then track its appearance in the tissues of the neighbouring trees. These studies have confirmed unequivocally that water is being transferred from tree to tree, and that the primary conduit for this transfer is the shared mycorrhizal network. The implications of this water trade are profound. It means that the resilience of a forest to drought is not just a property of the individual trees, it is an emergent property of the connected network. The community as a whole is far more drought-resistant than any single, isolated tree would be. The network acts as a shared, communal water tank, a buffer that protects the most vulnerable members of the community from the lethal effects of dehydration. This understanding also sheds new light on the importance of biodiversity in a forest with a diverse mix of species, with different rooting depths, different water use strategies, and different fungal partners, will have a more complex, more robust, and more efficient water-sharing network than a monoculture plantation. The diversity of the parts creates a more resilient and stable whole. The pine tree and the maple tree are not just competitors, they are also in a very real sense collaborators in the shared project of keeping the forest hydrated. To contemplate this silent underground water trade is to be filled with a sense of wonder at the elegant and cooperative solutions that life has evolved to solve its most fundamental challenges. It is a powerful reminder that in the natural world, survival is often not about rugged individualism, but about being a part of a supportive and interconnected community. The trees of the forest have learned a deep and ancient truth, that a burden shared is a burden lessened, and that a resource shared is a resource multiplied. They have woven themselves together through their silent fungal partners into a single, unified and hydraulic whole, a superorganism that is capable of moving a river, not just to the sky, but from one neighbour to another, in a quiet, life-giving and profoundly beautiful act of communal care. Our journey into the secret life of the forest has, so far, been a story of profound and beautiful cooperation. We have seen a world of sharing, of nurturing and of mutual support. We have marvelled at the altruism of the mother trees, the efficiency of the underground marketplace, and the collective wisdom of the forest brain. It is a comforting and deeply appealing vision of the natural world, a vision of a peaceful, harmonious, and utopian society. But the natural world is never that simple. The same, intricate and powerful network that facilitates this beautiful cooperation can also be used for more selfish, more competitive, and more sinister purposes. The Wood Wide Web, like the human internet, has a dark side. It is a world of warfare, of deception, of theft, and of sabotage. To truly understand the forest, we must be willing to look at its shadows as well as its light. Let us begin with the most direct form of conflict, chemical warfare. Some trees are not content to simply outcompete their neighbours for light and resources. They have evolved the ability to actively attack and to suppress their rivals, using the fungal network as a delivery system for their biological weapons. The black walnut tree, Juglans nigra, is a master of this dark art. The roots of the black walnut produce a powerful and toxic chemical called juglone. Juglone is an allelopathic compound, meaning it is a chemical that is produced by one plant to inhibit the growth of another. It is a potent herbicide. When a black walnut tree is connected to the mycorrhizal network, it can release this juggalo not just into its own immediate soil environment, but also into the shared fungal web. The network, which for most trees is a conduit for life-giving resources, becomes a weaponized delivery system. The juglone can travel through the fungal hyphae and be delivered directly to the roots of a neighbouring competing tree, such as a pine or a birch. The juglone disrupts the competitor's metabolism, inhibits its respiration, and stunts its growth. The black walnut is actively poisoning its neighbours, using the shared network to conduct a targeted chemical strike. It is a quiet, slow-motion, and deeply insidious form of warfare. The network can also be a battleground for competing fungal empires. The soil is not inhabited by a single, monolithic fungal mycelium. It is a complex mosaic of different fungal individuals and different fungal species, each one competing for resources and for access to their tree partners. When two different mycelial networks meet, the interaction is often hostile. They can recognize each other as self and non-self. They will often form a clear boundary line in the soil, a no-man's land, where they engage in a form of chemical warfare, secreting compounds to attack and to inhibit the growth of their rival. The silent world of the soil is a patchwork of competing fungal territories, a world of silent subterranean battles for dominance. But perhaps the most fascinating and devious inhabitants of the dark web are not the warriors, but the thieves. These are the plants that have learned to hack the system, to exploit the cooperative economy of the forest for their own, purely selfish ends. They are the parasites, the cheaters, the con artists of the plant kingdom. Let us contemplate one of the most beautiful and mysterious of these plants, the ghost plant, or Indian pipe, Monotropa uniflora. When you encounter a ghost plant in the deep shade of the forest floor, it is an ethereal and startling sight. It is a small, pale, almost translucent white, with a single, bell-shaped flower that hangs its head towards the ground. The most striking thing about the ghost plant is what it lacks. It has no chlorophyll. It has no green. It cannot perform photosynthesis. It cannot create its own food from the sun. And yet, it is a flowering plant. It is alive. So where is it getting its energy? For a long time, the ghost plant was thought to be a saprophyte, a plant that made its living by decomposing dead organic matter in the soil, like a fungus. But the truth is far more cunning. The ghost plant is a mycoheterotroph, a fungus eater, but it does not eat the fungus. It has evolved a remarkable and highly sophisticated strategy to tap into the forest's underground economy and to steal the resources it needs. The ghost plant forms a mycorrhizal connection with the same fungal network that is connected to the surrounding trees, but it does not participate in the normal, fair trade of the forest marketplace. It is a pure consumer. It offers nothing in return. It is a highwayman on the information superhighway. It hacks the network. It plugs itself into the fungal mycelium, and it simply draws the carbon, the sugars, that the fungus has acquired from its photosynthetic tree partners. The ghost plant is in essence stealing sunlight, but it is stealing it second-hand. The carbon has been fixed by a nearby tree traded to the fungus, and is now being siphoned off by this beautiful, pale, and utterly parasitic plant. The ghost plant is a triple agent. It is a plant that is acting like an animal, a consumer, by parasitizing a fungus, which is in turn parasitizing, or more accurately, in a symbiotic relationship with another plant. It is a beautiful and intricate chain of deception. The ghost plant has found a loophole in the system, a way to make a living in the dark, competitive world of the forest floor without ever having to produce its own food. There are many different kinds of these mycoheterotrophic cheaters in the plant kingdom. Some of the most beautiful and sought-after orchids, for example, are non-photosynthetic and spend their entire lives as parasites on the fungal network. They have abandoned the most fundamental and defining characteristic of the plant kingdom, the ability to create life from light, and have instead evolved into masters of deception and theft. The existence of these dark strategies, the chemical warfare, the territorial disputes, the parasitic cheaters, does not negate the profound and beautiful reality of the forest cooperative network. In fact, it reinforces it. The very fact that these strategies of deception and theft can exist is a testament to the power and the prevalence of the underlying cooperative system. A system of cheating can only evolve in a world where there is a system of trust to be exploited. The dark side is a parasitic shadow that is cast by the bright light of cooperation. To contemplate this dark side of the web is to gain a more complete, a more nuanced, and a more realistic picture of the forest. It is not a simple utopia. It is a complex, dynamic, and morally ambiguous society, a world that is in many ways not so different from our own. It is a world where the tendencies towards cooperation and towards competition, towards generosity and towards selfishness, are in a constant and dynamic tension. The forest is a place of great beauty and of great brutality, of profound altruism and of cunning deception. It is a world that reminds us that life is not a simple morality play. It is a complex, messy, and endlessly fascinating drama, a story of both the light and the dark, woven together in the intricate, hidden, and beautiful web of the world. A forest is a place of deep and profound rhythm. There is the daily rhythm of the sun's rising and setting, the opening and closing of the leaves. There is the monthly rhythm of the moon and the tides, a subtle gravitational pulse that is felt even by the water in the trees. There is the annual rhythm of the seasons, the great, slow breath of the forest, the bursting forth of the life in the spring, the lush fullness of the summer, the graceful senescence of the autumn, and the deep, quiet sleep of the winter. These rhythms are the great external pacemakers of the forest, the celestial and climatic metronomes to which all of life is synchronized. But within this grand, external rhythm, there is another, more subtle and more mysterious pulse. It is the internal rhythm of the forest, the synchronized, collective behavior of the community. The trees of a forest do not just act as individuals, each one responding independently to the external cues. They act as a coordinated whole, a synchronized community. And the key to this synchronization, the conductor of this great green orchestra, is the hidden, underground network that connects them. Let us contemplate one of the most dramatic and mysterious of these synchronized behaviors, the phenomenon of the mast year. In many species of trees, particularly oaks, beeches, and pines, the production of seeds is not a consistent year-to-year affair. Instead, it is highly variable and synchronized. For several years in a row, the trees in a forest will produce very few, if any, seeds. These are the bust years, and then suddenly, in a single, coordinated and spectacular event, all the trees of the same species, over a vast geographical area, will produce a massive, superabundant crop of seeds. This is the mast year. The forest floor will be carpeted with acorns, with beech nuts, with pine cones. It is a year of incredible synchronized fertility. For a long time, the explanation for this phenomenon was thought to be purely environmental. A particularly favorable combination of weather conditions, a warm spring, a wet summer, was thought to be the trigger that allowed the trees to produce such a large crop. But this explanation is incomplete. It does not account for the incredible degree of synchronization. How do all the trees, over hundreds of square miles, all decide to have a mast year at the same time? The weather may be a contributing factor, but it is not the whole story. The trees are talking to each other. They are making a collective decision. The current thinking is that this decision is mediated by a combination of chemical signaling, both through the air and through the underground fungal network. The trees are engaged in a multi-year chemical conversation. They are monitoring their own internal energy reserves, they are sensing the environmental cues, and they are communicating their status to their neighbours. The decision to mast is a collective one, a consensus that is reached by the entire community. But why do they do this? The leading theory is the predator satiation hypothesis. The primary predators of tree seeds are animals like squirrels, mice, jays, and insects. In a normal year, with a small and predictable seed crop, these predator populations can be very efficient, consuming almost all of the seeds that are produced. But in a mast year, the sheer overwhelming abundance of the seeds completely overwhelms the predators. There are simply too many seeds for them to eat. The squirrels and the mice can feast until they are full, and still, the forest floor is covered in seeds. This satiation of the predators ensures that a significant number of the seeds will survive, uneaten, and will have a chance to germinate and to become the next generation of trees. In the bust years, the low seed production helps to keep the predator populations in check, so that they do not become too numerous. The trees are, in a sense, managing the predator populations, creating a cycle of boom and bust that maximizes the long-term survival of their own offspring. It is a brilliant, long-term and highly strategic reproductive strategy. and it is a strategy that can only work if it is synchronized. If a single tree were to produce a large crop of seeds in a bust year, it would be a feast for the local predators, and all of its seeds would be eaten. The strategy is only effective as a collective, coordinated action. This synchronization is a form of collective intelligence. The forest is making a long-term strategic decision that benefits the entire community. It is a decision that is based on the integration of a huge amount of information, the internal energy status of each tree, the environmental conditions over several years, and the chemical signals being exchanged throughout the network. The forest is acting as a single, reproductive entity. We can see this synchronization in other aspects of the forest's life as well. The timing of the spring bud burst, for example, is often highly synchronized within a local community. While it is primarily triggered by the increasing day length and the rising temperatures, there is evidence that chemical communication between the trees helps to fine-tune the timing, ensuring that the entire community leaves out together. This may help to protect the tender young leaves from late frosts or from a sudden early-season insect outbreak. The rhythm of the forest is the rhythm of a healthy, connected community. It is the pulse of a superorganism. The fungal network is the pacemaker, the conductor that keeps the different sections of the orchestra in time. It is the nervous system that allows the forest to act not as a cacophony of competing soloists, but as a single, harmonious and beautiful symphony. To contemplate this rhythm is to be filled with a sense of the deep underlying order of the natural world. It is to see that the life of the forest is not a series of random, chaotic events, but a structured, patterned, and deeply meaningful dance. It is a dance that is choreographed by the sun, by the seasons, and by the quiet, constant, and collective conversation of the trees themselves. It is a rhythm that we, as humans, have often failed to hear, our own frantic and individualistic lives out of sync with the slow, patient, and communal pulse of the forest. To learn to listen to this rhythm, to learn to appreciate this deep collective wisdom, is one of the most important lessons that the secret life of the trees can teach us. It is a lesson in the beauty of synchrony, in the power of collective action, and in the profound and simple truth that we are all, in the end, part of the same, rhythmic and interconnected dance of life. To communicate, one must first have something to say, and to have something to say, one must first perceive the world. The complex social and communicative life of a tree is built upon a foundation that is even more fundamental and, in many ways, more mysterious, its ability to sense. A tree is not a passive, unfeeling object. It is a profoundly sensitive and perceptive being. It is a sentinel, a silent, patient observer that is constantly gathering a huge amount of information about its environment. It may not have eyes or ears or a nose in the way that we do, but it has its own, exquisitely evolved and deeply sophisticated ways of seeing, of hearing, of smelling, of tasting, and of touching the world. To understand the secret life of a tree, we must first understand the secret sensory life of a tree. Let us begin with the most important sense for a plant, the sense of light. For a tree, light is not just a source of information, it is the source of life itself. The ability to find the light, to measure its quantity, its quality, its direction, and its duration is the most critical and non-negotiable task of a plant's existence. And so, a tree is, in essence, a single, vast, and complex eye. Its entire body is a photoreceptor. The leaves are the most obvious and powerful light sensors. They're covered in a variety of different photoreceptor proteins, each one tuned to a specific wavelength of light. The chlorophylls, which give the leaves their green color, are the primary receptors for the red and blue light that powers photosynthesis. But there are other, more subtle light sensors as well. The phytochromes are a class of receptors that are particularly sensitive to the red and far red parts of the spectrum. The phytochromes are the tree's timekeepers and its shade detectors. They allow the tree to see the length of the day, the changing of the seasons. The ratio of red to far red light changes dramatically at dawn and at dusk, and the phytochromes use this signal to set the tree's internal circadian clock, telling it when to photosynthesize, when to grow, and when to prepare for the coming of winter. The phytochromes also allow a tree to see its neighbors. When sunlight passes through the leaf of another plant, the chlorophyll in that leaf absorbs most of the red light, but it allows the far red light to pass through. A tree that is growing in the shade of another tree will therefore experience a light environment that is very rich in far red light. The phytochromes detect this shift in the light quality, and they interpret it as a clear and unambiguous signal. You are being shaded. You're in danger of being outcompeted. This signal can trigger a suite of adaptive responses, such as a rapid elongation of the stem, a shade avoidance response that is a desperate attempt to grow up and out of the shadow of its competitor. Another class of photoreceptors, the cryptochromes and the phototropins, are sensitive to the blue and the ultraviolet parts of the spectrum. These are the receptors that control the tree's sense of direction. They allow the tree to see where the sun is in the sky and to orient its growth towards it, a process known as phototropism. The phototropins are responsible for the beautiful slow-motion dance of a sunflower as it tracks the sun across the sky, and for the way a houseplant will bend its stem towards a window. The tree is not just sensing the presence of light, it is actively seeking it, constantly adjusting its own form to optimize its access to the life-giving energy of the sun. But the sensory world of a tree is not limited to the light. A tree also has a profound and sensitive sense of touch. The slightest mechanical stimulus, the gentle touch of a passing animal, the landing of an insect, the constant gentle pressure of the wind is detected and processed. The leaves, the stems and the roots are all covered in mechanosensitive cells and channels that can convert a physical pressure into a chemical or an electrical signal. We have already seen this in the dramatic example of the Venus flytrap, where the touch of an insect on a trigger hair is the signal that springs the trap. But this sense of touch is present in all trees. A climbing vine, for example, has a highly developed sense of touch in its tendrils. When a tendril touches a solid object, like the branch of another tree, it will trigger a rapid and complex growth response, causing the tendril to coil tightly around the object, providing a secure anchor for the climbing plant. The wind is a constant source of tactile information for a tree. A tree that is growing in a windy location will respond to this constant mechanical stress by growing a shorter, thicker, and stronger trunk. It is strengthening its own body in response to the physical demands of its environment. This process, known as thigmomorphogenesis, is a form of exercise for the tree. The tree can feel the force of the wind, and it adapts its own physical form to be better able to withstand it. The roots, too, have a highly developed sense of touch. As a root tip grows through the soil, it is constantly sensing the physical environment around it. It can feel the texture of the soil particles, it can detect the presence of obstacles like rocks, and it can navigate its way around them. It is exploring the subterranean world not just with chemistry, but with a physical, tactile sense. A tree also has a sense that is analogous to our senses of smell and taste. This is the chemical sense, to detect and to respond to the vast and complex world of molecules. We have seen this in the way that a tree can smell the airborne VOCs released by a wounded neighbour, or in the way that its roots can taste the chemical exudates of other roots in the soil. The entire surface of the tree, from the stomata on its leaves to the delicate membranes of its root hairs, is a vast chemosensory organ. It is constantly tasting the air, the water, and the soil, monitoring the chemical composition of its world with an incredible degree of sensitivity and specificity. It can detect the presence of scarce nutrients, the chemical signatures of friendly microbes, the warning signals of its neighbours, and the toxic compounds of its enemies. And what about hearing? Can a tree hear? This is a more controversial and less well understood area of plant sensation. A tree does not have ears, and it cannot detect the airborne pressure waves that we call sound in the same way that an animal can. But there is growing evidence that plants can detect and respond to vibrations. In one study, researchers played the sound of a caterpillar chewing to a plant. They found that the plant responded to this specific vibration by producing defensive chemicals in its leaves. The plant could hear the sound of its enemy, and it was reacting to it. It is possible that the tiny hair-like structures on the surface of a leaf can act as mechanoreceptors that are sensitive to the subtle vibrations of sound waves. The forest may not be as silent as we think. It may be filled with a world of vibrations and sounds that the plants are listening to, a world that is completely inaccessible to our own ears. Finally, a tree has a sense that we have no parallel for, a sense of gravity. A tree always knows which way is up and which way is down. A seed can be planted in any orientation, but the root will always grow downwards, and the shoot will always grow upwards. This response, known as gravitropism, is fundamental to the plant's survival. The tree has specialized cells called statocytes, which are located in the tips of its roots and its shoots. These cells contain dense starch-filled organelles called statoliths. These statoliths are like tiny biological pebbles. They are heavier than the rest of the cell, and so they will always settle at the lowest point of the cell, pulled down by the force of gravity. The position of these statoliths is then detected by the cell, which gives the plant a clear and unambiguous signal about the direction of the gravitational pull. The tree has a built-in compass, a biological gyroscope that allows it to orient itself perfectly in a three-dimensional world. To contemplate the sensory life of a tree is to be filled with a sense of wonder and of profound respect. It is to realize that the tree is not a passive, unfeeling object, but an active, aware, and deeply sensitive being. It is living in a rich and complex sensory world, a world of light, of touch, of chemistry, of vibration, and of gravity. It is constantly gathering information, processing it, and using it to make complex adaptive decisions. It is a sentinel, a silent, patient, and deeply intelligent observer of the world, and it is a powerful reminder that there are many different ways to be alive, many different ways to be aware, and many different ways to perceive the beautiful and mysterious universe in which we all live.